Number one, and I'm going to drive over to the pile here to get some material in my bucket. On the way over to the pile, we are going to be focusing first on do not exceed the maximum capacity of the loader or machine you're operating for the day. This particular loader, I have what let's call, just for fun's sake, a 4 or 5 yard bucket on here. And by not overloading it, we're going to have a couple of points for safety wise. The first point I'm going to make about overloading is the obvious, is the unstableness of the machine. So you can see as I drive, my seat is wobbling, I'm moving around. I do not have any material in my bucket at the moment. So as we add the material to our bucket, I'm going to slowly bring this up. Okay, tip number one. Obviously, if this is an overloaded bucket or even a full bucket, we don't want to overload the bucket, meaning if this was a rocky material, let's say I'm picking up riprap or crushed concrete right now. If I go into this pile and overload the bucket and allow that material or any kind of recycled material or chunky material to come over the top of the bucket, what you're going to tend to see is all that material is then going to rest itself on my arm. And if I don't pay attention to that as I go over to the load, the truck or the stockpile or whatever we're doing with this, the stockpile really doesn't pertain because we don't have to lift it all the way up to dump it. But the truck is in a very good talking point about this. If I have material, meaning recycled material, the dirt not so much, but we can have some rocks in there. Anything that's chunky, if I have that sitting on my arm right now, what do you think is going to happen when I pick this arm all the way up in the air? Those rocks and debris are going to roll down my arm and come right into my windshield, possibly smashing the windshield, which is might end the day depending on how bad it's going to be. It's definitely going to slow down the production. We're going to have to deal with this. So for safety reasons, talking about the maximum capacity, we obviously want to get nice full buckets, but if it's any kind of material that's going to be a danger while lifting or coming out of the bucket, we can shake a little bit and get rid of that material. One more full bucket is not worth blasting the windshield out of this machine. So again, depending on the type of material we're loading, we're going to be cautious and mindful of how much we're going to let that material come over the top of the bucket. All right? The other topic we're going to talk about while we're lifting is lifting and lowering slowly. So again, we have a full bucket, and I'm going to back up a little bit. If this was pulling up to a truck, I want to go very, very slow, lifting the boom. As well as if I'm driving, and this is the most important part. If for any reason you find yourself in a production situation or a job site situation to where you're having to kind of pick the bucket up in the air, and I've done this quite a bit with crushed concrete and road base, any kind of road operations to where you're putting fine material down or picking up fine windrows and giving them to the motor grader operator later down the road. If you're finding yourself needing to drive with the bucket in the air for any circumstance, we want to move these operations very, very, very slow. We talked about not overloading or we talked about not overloading this bucket. So as I bring the bucket up in the air, if I have any left or right wobbling going on, you can see, and I'm going to drive through some of this bumpy area, you can see just how unstable this machine is going to get. My seat, I'm in first gear and doing 5 miles an hour, and my seat is moving all over the place. If I was to cut left or right hard, one direction or the other, I stand a very, very good chance of tipping this machine over, being overloaded or even loaded to the max. So moving those operations nice and slow. You just saw that just a very, very nice little gentle bump, and I'm going to do this a couple times while we're talking today because this is the most dangerous situation. I have a full bucket this time. Now watch how fast this loader bucket goes to the ground. Obviously, we've added some weight to the situation, so it's going to speed up how fast it's falling out of the air. So I did all those operations and checks before I started my day to know that that's exactly what's going to happen if I press the float button with a full bucket in the air.